Welcome to the Simpler Business Podcast, where we talk about ways to do what you love and serve your people in a way that brings you income and freedom. I'm your host, Marissa Roberts. Join me as I chat with my favourite entrepreneurs about how they simplify their biz so that you can simplify yours. As a business owner, you know that running a successful business takes a lot of time, effort, and resources. And if you've been listening to this show for a while, you'll know that I am a big fan of finding ways to make running your business smoother and easier. One option to streamline your business and free yourself up to focus on your zone of genius is to consider outsourcing the simple and repetitive tasks in your biz. The tasks that don't necessarily need your face or your voice or your personality in order to get things done. You can outsource general tasks to a contractor or a virtual assistant, or you could work with an expert in a particular area that you'd like to outsource. There are plenty of great options available out there. But how do you know when it's really the right time to start outsourcing? When I talk with our listeners about outsourcing, they tend to raise the same questions. What should I outsource? How do I know if I can afford it? Who do I outsource to? And how can I manage it when it just kind of feels like it's quicker and easier to do it myself instead of training and checking the quality of someone else's work? But what will happen to you and your business if you don't outsource? It's impossible to be everywhere and do everything at once, and trying to wear all of the hats and do all of the things forever is only going to lead to burnout and inconsistency. My guest today is going to walk us through the simpler side of outsourcing so it doesn't have to feel like a huge undertaking and a ton of extra work to set it up. Eman Zabi started her first company, The Scribesmith, at 22, and since then The Scribesmith has gone on to work with clients like Stanford University, Netflix, and Meetup. Now they specialize in launch and funnel strategy for online educators, helping them leverage their expertise to build scalable online businesses. Eman is also the founder of Terrain, an online learning platform that prioritizes learner experience to increase course completion and knowledge retention. Her passion for technology and entrepreneurship led her to teach MVP development and Stanford University's Peace Innovation Lab to over 100 students from Stanford, Yale, and Drexel. Eman's experience as both a startup owner and marketer gives her a unique, multidisciplinary approach to business development, marketing, and strategy, which allows her to see opportunities and threats that others might overlook. And she currently lives in Dublin, Ireland. When she's not working, she takes impromptu trips to explore the Irish countryside. Your life just sounds so much fun, Eman. Welcome to the show. I'm excited you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
That's really cool. I think that a lot of people think that business has to be a big, serious thing. They're the only one that loves and knows their business like nobody else. That letting go of control and actually allowing a bit of space for fun and for things that are interesting and to kind of go outside that box that we all kind of put ourselves in for the first 1 to 3 years of our business. I think it's really important that we let go a little bit, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's kind of what makes entrepreneurship and business so fulfilling, because if I wanted that structure and that, like, you've got to do the same thing every day, I would have gone and gotten 9 to 5. And I honestly wouldn't have survived in that, being perfectly honest. But no, I love that my business gives me the flexibility to just play and have fun. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. And that's the great thing about it.
Yeah, and it's no big deal. If we make a wrong decision, we can make another one. If something doesn't work out, we can tweak a little. You don't know if it's going to work until you try it, right?
Absolutely. And failure is a good thing. I think failure is data, and everything is a learning experience, and that's kind of how it works.
I love how you just said failure is data, because that was like a little light. We could end the episode here. That was a little light bulb for me. Because I'm like, failure doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to have an emotional attachment to it. It's just data. That's such a good way to look at it.
Yeah, no, it definitely helps, because I think in business, you're trying so many different things all the time. And if you're not keeping track of what's working and what isn't, and the whys behind it, without getting like caught up on the, oh, I'm a failure, or I'm an imposter, I'm not good enough, then you're not really you're not squeezing everything you can out of those experiences to learn and move forward. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because all of us face imposter syndrome at some point, and it never goes away completely. You always get a new level of it with each
Yeah.
progression that you make. It's always there somewhere. So if anyone's listening out now going, imposter syndrome, I hear you. You're not alone. We all face it. It happens to everybody. And actually, I think that's why outsourcing works so well, because you can start to outsource the things that internally you're like, I'm not very good at this. You can start letting go of the need to do it yourself. But I don't know. I think a lot of us, that first step into outsourcing in our business, right, is the hardest one. The very first time you do it, because you don't know, how do I find the right person? How do I train them? How do I make sure they give me exactly what they want? What should I be paying them? What's too much? What's too little? I don't know. Do you feel like we get to a part in our business where we know it's going to be the right time to outsource, or are there signs that we should look for as an indication that we should start outsourcing in our business?
So when I was getting started, the advice I was always given was, oh, outsource before you're ready. And that sounds great, but I also don't know what that means. So I was just like, before I'm ready. I wasn't ready on day one. Should I be outsourcing right away? Like
Before the
it
business
just felt
open?
like a really grandiose statement to make, but I didn't feel like it was very practical. Now that I'm sort of 7 years into this, what I would say to people is like, look at your profit margins and where you're at in your business. And if you're in a point where you have a sizable cushion coming in, like if you've got, and I would say, like, if you've got, after you pay yourself, you still have about 30% left.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good time to start looking at putting things back into your business and looking at things that you can kind of take off of your plate, because the truth in that statement, outsource before you're ready, really comes from the idea that outsource before you're burnt out. And I think that's a better way to kind of look at it, because a lot of us get to the point where we're doing all the things for all the people while trying to like have a life outside of it, and squeeze in things like food, water, exercise, sleep.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, it's very overwhelming. And the process of hiring and finding the right fit is a longer process than, people would assume. So I think start early, and it's just so important, especially when you're early on. I mean, this is a different conversation altogether, but like to keep track of like the numbers in your business and know when you can actually afford to hire. So once you kind of have that a little bit of a cushion, I think that's when you start looking at things that you can kind of take off your plate. So typically what I would recommend for folks is things that are hard to screw up, really, just like hard to like, really simple things that could be systemized and handed off to somebody. Really simple things like, for example, inbox management, or one thing for us was always moving tasks from a client's Asana into ours. These are hard things to kind of drop the ball on, but just, someone who could do that kind of admin work, that's really, really helpful. It saves you time and brain power, because, there's only so many decisions you can make in a day without being absolutely just tired. The decision fatigue also comes into it. So just taking those little things off of your plate. And the other approach is to hire somebody to, if you're a service provider, like if you are, for example, I started off as a copywriter, someone to split the work with.
Oh,
Once you kind of develop your process and things like that, that's the other approach. And that's actually what I ended up doing. My very first hire, who's still with me today and is like the greatest person I've ever hired in my life. Like truly, I used up all of my hiring karma with the very first hire. It was incredible. And she is a copywriter as well, but she also had a background as a VA and OBM. So she was able to do both sides for me.
yeah, she knows the stuff already. That's really handy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you know her before, or did you put the call out and she applied? Because I think that's where a lot of our listeners get stuck. They're like, who do I hire? Who do I look for? How do I know they're a good fit if I've never outsourced this job before?
I put a call out. So I had never met her. I'd never even heard of her before. I put a call out in a Facebook group, and I asked, for applications. If I was doing it over now, because groups are a lot more saturated now, I wouldn't actually just post in a Facebook group. When we're hiring now, what we do is we go to LinkedIn.
Ooh.
And we put actual job posts out. We put $50 or $60 behind it. We have an actual application process. People fill forms out. We add a little bit of friction to the process on purpose, so we weed out people who aren't serious. We do interviews. We look at writing samples. We do the whole thing like legitimate company, because that's kind of what we are. And you gotta, and I think for people when they're outsourcing, it's very easy. The imposter syndrome kind of comes in. It's just little old me. I don't want to have a formal process. I don't want to get too big for my boots. But no, you are a company. If you are hiring somebody, you're in a position to pay them. You need to take yourself seriously as well. So putting those processes in place is so important.
That's such a good point, because I know a lot of people, when they start off as solopreneurs, when they think about outsourcing work, they're in this mindset of, I need to find someone to help me. Like, it's almost like this rescue mindset, like they need someone to come in and save them by freeing them up. No, you're getting somebody to come and work for you in your company. You can still have a great relationship, but they're going to turn to you for answers to things. They're going to look to you to be professional. You're going to be providing them with money that they spend on living their lives, like a paycheck, whether it's contracting work or regular work. Either way, they're looking to you as a leader, whether you kind of want that or not.
No, absolutely. And I think it's so important that you have that clarity before you're kind of going out there. And like, you may be hiring somebody who's an expert, but at the end of the day, you know your business better than anybody else. And and I think especially when, a first hire is often a VA or an OBM. And if you are, I mean, I see this a lot in the online business space, where people are self-identified hot messes and want a VA or OBM to come in and fix it all for them. But that's all, you're not, and then when it doesn't work out, they're like, oh, they're a terrible VA or OBM, but you're not really doing the work to set them up for success either.
Yeah. You want like a fairy godmother, basically, that you pay less than minimum wage for.
Yes.
And then you wonder why they're not committed to your business as much as you are as the business owner, because there's a different dynamic there, right? When you own the business, especially if you've had to bootstrap it for the first couple of years, you're like, no, that's fine, I can make whatever work. But if you've got somebody coming in working with you, they're going to give you the best of their ability, but they need to be compensated well for it and supported well for it at the same time. So that's a whole nother, you got to go from solopreneur to CEO mindset, really, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, there is that growth that you need to do, like on a mindset level, but also like in terms of systems and processes. Like when you're doing everything yourself, everything's up here. What every client needs. You know where all of the things are stored in your Google Drive folder. But when you're bringing somebody else in, you kind of got to clean house first. You need to put things in your folders. You need to have some semblance of a system or organization, or at least take the time out to walk them through it and train them before you just kind of throw them into the deep end. And I think that's one of the most important things that you've got to do. It's understand that it takes time, which is why you want to do it before you're stressed and overwhelmed and burnt out, and dedicate the time to setting up your team members for success.
Yeah, those systems and processes are a real big one. And it's definitely an afterthought for a lot of us, because you're right, everything's up here. We know where everything is. We know how to find it. We remember how we did it last time. It's kind of built in. But yeah, I think one of the easiest things to do, right, is to create, if you're setting up your folders and you're setting up your files and you're setting up your processes, it's really just taking a moment to go, if I was outsourcing, if you haven't hired anyone yet, if I was outsourcing, how would I set this up so they could access it easily? That's kind of the thing you've got to do right at the start in that case then, isn't it? Because if you set it all up on your personal systems and everything's like saved to your own laptop, then you're doubling your work when you bring someone in later. So start using your cloud-based drive. Start using folders that make sense, where you can find where you've stored things later when you're looking for them. Little things, but they make a difference.
Yeah, and I used to have this terrible habit of just opening up a new Google Doc every time I wanted to do something and not labeling it or like putting it in the right. Yep. it drives people on my team nuts. But there's also the tech part of it where you can set things up. Now what we have is that we have Zaps that organize our files for us. Which is really handy because it reads the title of the file and we'll put it in the right folder. So that is really handy. So there's ways to work around it. And even if you kind of, didn't do the groundwork when you were starting up, because, I know it's crazy and you're kind of getting to the point where you want to hire, like honestly carve out 3-4 days and just dig in and clean up to the point where you can at least walk someone through it and tell them where to find things. And then, maybe you make that their first task. That's going through everything in your Drive folder and organizing things. So it's just kind of figuring it out. The other thing that we do that I think is really helpful for folks is we have like company orientation. Their first week is orientation, proper American university style orientation, where we have like our offices in the metaverse. They get their desk, they decorate their desk. Then they go to these Asana trainings and Slack trainings, and they have trainings with different members of our team throughout the first week. And what that does is it gets them used to using all of our systems and tools, and also lets them experience where everything is, and it gives them like tells them who to go to for questions. Because as you're kind of getting past your first hire, you don't want to be the person that they come running to every time they have a question, because you really want to step into that CEO role.
Yes, that's such a good point. I think we all miss that giving them dedicated time at the start to get familiar with your channels and with your systems. Anytime I've ever done work for someone else before, whether that be a big company or as a contractor, that's kind of like what it was missing when it was the contractor work. Big companies have all your internalized systems. You have a whole, couple of weeks of getting used to here's how we do things, here's why we do things this way. But whenever I've worked with, say, solopreneurs or small business owners, they mean well. They love what they do, but they just kind of assumed that I knew how to use Slack, or that I knew how to use Dropbox, or that I knew how to use, I don't know, anything really. And just because I can learn it and I can go and watch the video training and check the FAQs and go in the knowledge center, I know how to upskill myself. But I was never given the time, like paid time or company time, to actually upskill on that. There was just an expectation that I'd be doing that myself, which isn't, now that I think about it, it's not a great way to do it. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so in terms of what we outsource, start with the absolute basics. It's the click and drag stuff, the organizing stuff, the stuff that there are templates for, right? That you don't need your brain behind it. So that way they don't have to come to you and ask questions. And I love that idea of when you start hiring, hire with the idea in mind that this person you hire might become the person that the next person goes to. That alone is like, that's going to free you up big time. What about, how do you know if it's going well? So how do you measure success, return on investment? One thing that a lot of our listeners say is, I really want to outsource, but I'm worried that I won't be using my money wisely. How do I know later if I'm wasting my money in one area? Do you have any tips on how to measure if it's going really well?
So, I mean, that's definitely going to vary from role to role. So if you're hiring, say, a copywriter, you're really looking at the quality of the output versus like how long it's taking and things like that. But if you're hiring, say, someone in an admin type role, I think the onus is on you to set like really clear, like, this is your role. This is kind of what I want to do. These are the hours I would like to take off of my schedule. And that's for admin roles. That's kind of how I'm looking at it always. It's what is my time worth? In terms of like, what do I bill my clients when I'm actually working on something? How many hours am I spending on admin work? And then what am I paying the admin person or the VA to do this? And how much am I saving on that? And that to me is the ROI.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. And you'll kind of intuitively know that at the start, and then you just tweak and measure as you go, right? Because you've got to kind of see it to know. Yeah, that's a good point. So much of business is actually jumping in and doing something.
It really is. Yeah, absolutely. And then I think also once you start to grow, just having things like, I know time tracking gets a bad rap, but I think it's so important for you in your business because it lets you see where you're spending your time, but also where your team is spending their time, and helps you optimize for efficiency. I've never gone to a team member and been like, you spent too much time on this. And like, I don't like, it's not about like what they're billing me, but it's good to see overall how efficient we are as a company, and where there are things that don't necessarily need to be done by a human, where there's tech that can do that, and I can then leverage their expertise somewhere else in the company. So it's always really just your, I think, role as a CEO becomes understanding how your team is functioning and supporting your team while they do their jobs. And I think that's the shift that people will have to make eventually.
Yeah, I think having that distinction too between remembering that people are here to help you with tasks and help you with your business, but they are people as well. So clear training, support, KPIs, like it doesn't have to be like a massive company's official KPIs, but just knowing what they're aiming for. If people have a goal that they want to reach, that gives them the motivation and the direction to go in to actually achieve that goal. If you just say, oh, can you take care of my inbox for me? And they're like, okay, I'll just jump into this puddle here and try and figure out what I'm doing. Like, what exactly do you mean? What does me doing this well look like? Yeah, the clearer we are as the person doing the hiring, the easier it's going to be for them to meet the expectations, right?
Yeah, and along those lines, also just having realistic expectations because, if someone's coming in and you have your way of doing things, it does take a little bit of time for them to wrap their heads around things. Some of the best people I've worked with, um, I think I can say this now, I've been fairly frustrated with in the first month, but giving them that grace period to kind of just find their feet really is important because different people learn in different ways. You may not be as clear as you think you are. You're just, yeah, you have to treat them like an actual person who's trying to do their best.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good idea. And not just say to them, hey, I'm bringing you on because I want someone who's going to run my business like it's theirs. Even that's it's not clear at all. It's like, no, we want actual tasks. We want to know where to find what we need to complete the task. And we want to check in with you to see how we're going. I think if you've got those 3 areas covered, you're pretty much going to be okay. And it's going to, give back in the long run because you're going to have people that want to stay with you then, so you don't have to keep rehiring and retraining. I think that alone's a pretty big indicator, right? If you've got people that you're outsourcing to that stay for a really long time, that's really the unspoken indicator that it's going really, really well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that first hire that I talked about, she's still with the company today. I mean, you've interacted with her. Haley was that
She's
person, and
amazing.
yeah, honestly, like unicorn right off the bat. It's incredible. And it's helpful because when you have those people who stay with your company long term, they also kind of one they start to understand your business as well as you do, and they can then see things from other perspectives. But it also kind of, as your team grows, I mean, it's premature to be talking about this, but the company culture and the vibe that your team has is also so important because people need to come in and feel like they're welcome and they're supported. And this is a healthy atmosphere because there's so many times we've gone in and worked with other teams where it's just, there's constant churn of employees. There's antagonism. People don't necessarily like each other. There's cattiness, and coming in can feel that vibe. And it's just really important that you are intentional about the people you choose, not just for their skill set, but also for how they fit into your overall, your values, what you're looking to achieve, and just generally good people, not necessarily the best option.
Yeah, so it's not just what they do and how they do it, it's who they are as well. And you do get that vibe, I think, when first time you talk to somebody, you do get an intuitive hit on what they're like personality wise or what their work ethic is like. And you can see all that from past work and references as well. So we shouldn't discount, just because you might be a solopreneur doing your first couple of hires doesn't mean you don't, go through and do it in a professional way and actually put a little bit of time into it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the number one thing that I have learned in terms of the hiring process is figuring out if somebody has the motivation to figure things out for themselves. Like, are they going to be proactive? And I found that is the number one indicator for me that this person is going to fit well with our team and be a good fit. Because like when you're in a startup environment or you're, a small business owner or an agency or anything like that, everybody does a little bit of everything. You need to be willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and really dive into it. And that proactiveness is probably the most important thing that I've found, that if we're able to that they have critical thinking skills, that they will Google before asking someone and try and figure it out themselves. Those to me have been the number one indicators.
Yeah. And that sort of thing, you've either got it or you haven't. You've got that initiative or you don't. And it's fine if you're somebody who just wants to be told exactly what to do and just do that. But whether or not that's going to fit the role you're looking to hire, it's a completely different thing. You need the right people with the right skills in the right spots to get the best results from them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you guys do about quality control? So if you're kind of like at a point where you've got a few people working with you, do you assign quality control to one of your contractors or your staff, or does it rest with you at the end and you check things? How do you do that?
So we've got a multi-layered system. So essentially we've got the junior writers on our team, the senior writers, and then it's me. So usually what happens with the junior writers, they will hand over to the senior writers. They go back and forth on edits, etc. When the senior writer feels like this is ready to go, ready for sign off, I wouldn't change a thing, then it comes to me. I sometimes have a few edits and then it goes kind of back down the chain. But more often than not, it's ready to go and I just sign off on it and it goes over to our project coordinator who handles delivery of whatever the project was.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you got a number of different layers in there that's ready to go. Yeah. And I imagine your senior editors would have been doing it for a while, so they'd know what you're looking for as well and can really kind of tell what the quality should be. That's really clever. This kind of makes, I really like this chat because it's made the idea of outsourcing, which can feel like a really big umbrella. You've got this really good way of kind of making it walk down a pathway. So it's actually something that's doable step by step instead of, oh, I just have to jump in and hope for the best and hope I don't hire somebody that's going to bring everything crashing to the ground. Because people have a tendency to be dramatic like that. Like, it's my business, it's my baby. Letting go is a really big thing, but it doesn't have to be, right? The more you
doesn't have to be at all.
Yeah. That's
And
amazing.
also just, it's not hard to fire. Like, honestly, hire slow, fire fast. Like, if you think somebody's not a good fit and you're sure it's not just, teething trouble, then let them go.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for me, because I'm a bit of a non-confrontational person, like I'm very uncomfortable with any confrontation at all. And I'll be working with people who aren't confronting at all, but I'll be imagining, what if we get in a situation where it could turn that way? I'm just going to avoid the possibility altogether. That's my stuff I've got to work on. That's internal. Nothing else is going to change that. And the more I practice that, the more likely I'm going to be able to handle stuff like that. But even like hiring and firing, there's systems and processes behind that. So it doesn't have to be an emotionally charged activity that you're doing. And do you ever get to a point now where you let other people do the hiring in your business? Or is it always like, no, buck stops with me because I'm the face of the brand? Or how does that work?
No, well, it depends on the type of position we're hiring for. But if we're hiring writers, the senior writers make the final call. They may come to me for like input on certain candidates, and we may have a discussion about it. But ultimately, if it's somebody reporting to them, then they make the final call.
That's the ultimate goal for me, is to have the outsourcing outsourced.
It's a little different for me because most of the people on my team are salaried employees at this point. So they do take a lot of like ownership of their roles. Yeah. But if it was a contractor, I mean, Haley is still a contractor. And yeah, she would have complete liberty to just hire whoever she wants if she felt it was necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. And that trust factor comes with time and comes with experience and working together. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for all of that. That has been really, really helpful. And I know our listeners who are like, okay, I haven't taken the step before to outsource, maybe this is their time. Maybe they're going to be comfy now to give it a go, not worry about, getting it perfect at the start. Just give it a go. Make sure you've got your systems clearly defined and the way you do things ready to go, so that when you bring someone on, you can just point them in the right direction and then check in with them, not go, okay, now that you're here, what do we do? Because that's a big thing that can happen sometimes. It's been super helpful having you, Eman. Thank you so much. If anybody wants to learn more from you, where's the best place they can find you? Is website the best? Socials, LinkedIn? What do you recommend if they want to see more?
So we're most active on Instagram. So our handle is scribesmith.inc. Probably the best place to connect with not just me, but our whole team. We're all on there. But if you want to connect with me personally, I use Twitter. So it's Eman.Zabi.
Oh, lovely. I'll put links in the show notes so it's really easy for people to find you all then in that case. And I know you guys have a launch planner app as well that's really helpful. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are planning your very first launch for some sort of a digital product and you're, overwhelmed by all of the different moving parts and you don't know how to plan your calendar for it or anything, what it will do is get you to input the size of your list, tentative dates, a couple of questions about your business, and it'll spit out a loose outline for you to follow and all the different bits and pieces you're going to need. So the different types of emails, the sales pages, whether you have a quiz or a challenge, it'll break all of that down for you.
I love that. Because a launch is so much puzzle pieces having to be put together. It's like somebody's done the whole puzzle for me in that case. I'm definitely going to give that a go. So I'll put a link to the show notes to that in the show notes as well so people can use it. That's a really clever idea. And I didn't even think I needed that until you said it just then. And now I know I do. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I hope everybody listening, you have enjoyed our conversation on outsourcing as much as I have enjoyed speaking with Eman about it. Let us know if you decide to outsource. Come and let me know on Instagram. Come and let Eman know on Twitter. If you decide to outsource, what do you choose first? How do you do it? Are there any hurdles? Let us know your experience. We always like input here, and go ahead and leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, because we want to make sure that we're covering topics that you are getting value from. And I will see you all in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Simpler Business Podcast. If you did, please subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to make it nice and easy for you, just the way we like it. If you're ready to simplify and scale your business, you can get started with my free audio class at marissaroberts.com. See you next time.